Joining me now live is Ukraine's ambassador to Australia, Vasyl Myroshnychenko. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. You've just returned from Ukraine. What's the latest situation over there?
Look, the situation is very difficult. Russians have been sending continuous missile and drone attacks on Kyiv and many other cities. Basically, during the past 3 days, we've seen another wave of those attacks, mostly hitting civilian infrastructure, but also sometimes just hitting random buildings. A hotel 5-minute walk from my flat was destroyed on the 31st of December. Also, my university campus was hit by the missiles. And we see that escalating on the massive basis. 50% of Ukraine's energy system has been already destroyed by the Russians.
And when you were speaking to people on the ground in Ukraine, how are they holding up? It's almost been 12 months now since this invasion began. How are the community going?
The people are demonstrating resilience. They are being united, and these attacks on the civilian infrastructure and actually deliberate attacks on the people have united Ukrainians as never before, and it generated a great deal of animosity towards Russia and everything Russian as a result of it. And I think Putin has lost Ukraine forever, because I think people of Ukraine will never be able to forgive him or the country for what they've done in Ukraine, how much suffering they have brought.
And as we enter the new year, 2023, what sort of support will Ukraine be requiring?
Ukraine needs support from friends and allies, including Australia. We'll need more military assistance, and this is what needs to be coming, and on a steady basis for us to be able to sustain in this war, but also to win. We need to make sure that our friends and allies and partners are able to provide the ammunition, artillery, armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles for us to be able to liberate Ukrainian land. Also, Ukraine will need macroeconomic assistance, help with to balance the budget. And the prediction is that for next year, we need over $30 billion to survive. But also we'll need assistance with energy, with coal, with electricity transmissions and power generators, because now many cities are in blackouts. When I was in Kyiv, it's really very saddening to see big parts of the city being turned off, having no electricity. And the country has to balance off the supply because of the destruction that Russians have brought for the past 3 months to our infrastructure.
Let's talk about the Australian Open. You've openly called for Russian players to be banned. What sort of a message do you think that would send?
Russian players could not take part in Wimbledon, and I think that was a decision of the organizers of the Wimbledon, and I think it was a very strong message. We know how important it is for Russia to have their athletes perform, and that's one of the reasons why we see how much Russia has invested in the athletes for the Olympics when they were doping them on a massive scale, and then Russia was eventually fined for that. So Russians are really paying a great deal of attention to the performance of their athletes, and this is pretty much an extension of their foreign policy. It's an extension of what they want to convey to the world. Therefore, there must be a strong response to that. Russian athletes cannot participate in any international competitions, especially in the democratic countries. And I think that even that they are participating under a neutral flag, doesn't matter what flag they're under, it's a flag which is tainted in the Ukrainian blood.
Okay, so even if Russia's players were playing here but not under their own flag, you would not accept that either?
No, I mean, what I would probably accept to see those Russian athletes convene a press conference next week in Melbourne and actually condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I mean, that would I accept, and if they can do it, that would be a big thing for Russia and for those athletes. Of course, they can't go back to Russia. Well, most of them don't live in Russia anyways, but I think that would be a very strong message that they could send.
Just finally, we are approaching 12 months since the war began. Where to from here?
Look, we don't know. Nobody knows because Ukraine has been able to liberate 50% of the land that Russians have occupied since the outbreak of the war. We've been demonstrating a good performance out there in the battlefield. Nevertheless, there's still a winter that we need to survive. There is still a great deal that we need to do to liberate Ukrainian land and to restore Ukraine's sovereignty. And the Ukrainian president has announced a peace plan, which includes 10 points, and every country can join those 10 points. And these 10 points include restoring Ukraine's sovereignty, respect for the UN Charter, food security, energy security, environment, demining, many other items out there, of course, as well as prosecuting the war criminals and creating a mechanism for Russia to pay for the damage done to Ukraine. And every country is now encouraged to participate and take leadership in one of those 10 points. Ukraine has passed on a request to the Australian government to join this peace formula from President Zelensky. And Ukrainian government is hoping to hold a summit in New York at the end of February, just actually around the that 1 year anniversary since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, to actually start the process, because every war ends with peace. And I think the formula that has been unveiled by President Zelensky creates a roadmap for that to be achieved.
An interesting year ahead. Vasyl Myroshnychenko, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.